Hi, I'm Susan Clare, GourmetQuilter. Thank you for being here. Today I thought I'd show you just a fun little idea. I started out with some 5-inch squares. I have piles of 5-inch squares and we're going to make some half square triangles with these. So basically I'm pairing up a colour with a light, neutral or some contrasting colour. That doesn't have to be light and neutral, it could be just different colours. But up here behind me you can see that I've got this almost like a chevron type design, but we've actually made them using half square triangles. So if I was to replace those two, they would go there like that. They're not quite the same colour, but you get the general idea. So each of these little colour bands is a two half square triangles, and if we're making them from our 5-inch squares with a light and a dark or two different colour squares, we end up with a pair. So you can then end up very nicely being able to make that sort of angled shape. And so because I've used multiple colours, I have kind of loosely grouped them in the sort of orangey reddy pinks and sort of greeny colours here, and these are some greys and then blues, and then these ones got a little bit random. It would be a matter of choice for you and colour. If you have a whole load of 5-inch squares like I do, you might want to make them different. You might have a whole lot of blues, so you might want to make a blue quilt, or you might have a whole lot of pinks and you might want to make a pink quilt. Who knows? So what I did, I'll just show you the process that I went through. So I've put two squares together, right sides together. On the light square or one of the squares I've drawn a diagonal line. So I've actually already done it, but I'll just show you just so that we can be sure. I've just gone from point to point just with a pencil line, and then I'm suggesting that you stitch 1/4 inch either side of that line. And so I've already done the stitching, and I actually stitched just a scant quarter, so ever so slightly under a quarter, not too close, but just so that that gives you enough room then to trim them afterwards. So we've started with 5-inch, we're going to trim them down, we're going to be trimming them this size to a 4.5 inch. So there'll be a 4-inch square when we put them in. So having done my stitching either side of my central line that I've drawn, I'm then going to cut them in half. And then to trim these ones, what I've actually done was, rather than press them open, usually I press things open at this stage and then I trim all around all 4 sides. But when you're making a lot of half square triangles, there is another way to trim, but you do have to be a little bit careful. It's not always as accurate, so you just need to keep a little bit of an eye out. And you may want to mark on a ruler. If you have a square ruler, it doesn't matter if it's larger, because I'm going to use my sewing line, which is probably a little bit hard for you to see because I've used a white thread. I'm using that, and I know I'm trimming them to a 4.5 inch square. So on my ruler here, my markings come along here and here. So I'm just going to lay my 4.5 inch mark at the sewing line. So not on the cut edge, but on the stitched line. So I'm hoping you can see this. So I've still got it folded, it's 2 fabrics together, there's a sewn line here, and I've got my 4.5 inch line on the ruler just intersecting with the sewing, or ever so slightly to the top side, and the same on this end here. It needs to pretty much intersect with that sewn line. So sometimes when we trim like this it's not quite as accurate, so just be aware of that, because sometimes we can have that just under the line and just over the line. If you have it pretty much on the line, but keep an eye on it, and you may want to mark your ruler for where to do it, but you will get the hang of it. And then you're going to trim the 2 sides. So what we have now is a nicely trimmed square, and we can press that. And the disadvantage of trimming like this, the advantage of course is that it's much quicker because we're only doing 2 sides and then we're pressing it open. The disadvantage is that we end up with these little points. So I usually then just come along and I just trim those little points off. So I'll just do the other one as well, just to make sure that you can see I'm coming along to my 4.5 inch line, facing that marker where the stitching is that I've already done, and then I'm going to trim off, and we don't want it to wander. 2 sides there. And I think that you'll find that that's kind of a nice way to do when there's lots of half square triangle units, but you just need to keep an eye on that cutting accuracy so that you don't get things that are all different sizes or slightly crooked either. Otherwise you can open them out. So you can either use your scissors to snip off those corners or your rotary cutter like I did on the other one. And then we have our half square triangles. And then, as you can see, all I've done is place them up on my wall here. And I've kept them in their pairs because I thought that was kind of nice to see that band of colour each time. And they just wander around a little bit, so we're going to keep them in the same direction. So this one is the next one again, so that we get that pattern following through. And there's so many things you can do with half square triangles. This is just one idea. There's so much playing to be had, and today we're just looking at this idea. So you can see how you can have just a lot of fun making some sort of Chevron style quilt using simply 5-inch squares that you've made into half square triangle units. So enjoy that little idea. I look forward to seeing what you make with them.